Hello. You were born in Brunei and lived in many places around the world and, at your Sri Lankan father's request, became a lawyer. But you had a passion for dance. So eventually you married and now live in India and own a very successful dance academy. Your son grows up and follows in his mother and father's footsteps, quite literally, and moves to Adelaide to study music theatre at the Conservatorium. That's a story worth a chat about, I think. So meet Kokila and Dhuruva. Hello. Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to OurTime.
Thank you.
And welcome to Australia. Of all the places you've been, have you been to Australia before?
Yes, because my sister is married to an Australian, was married to an Australian. And
Right.
that was the first time we came here for the wedding.
Right. Okay.
And I was like 1 year old.
You
no,
were one.
you were
Almost one.
Almost one.
You don't remember that,
No,
of course.
but I have heard that I took my first steps in Adelaide.
Oh, really?
He
Yeah.
started walking in Adelaide, and it's funny enough, I told him now you're actually running and dancing in Adelaide.
Yes, and quite literally but let's talk about you to start with, because I can't believe how much you've travelled, particularly for all of the things that you've done. So let's get the Kokila story.
So I was born and brought up in Brunei, Brunei being a small country in the Borneo Island. My dad's Sri Lankan, my mum's Indian. My dad's an accountant, and my mum was a housewife.
Isn't every Indian an accountant?
No, I think most of them are doctors and lawyers.
Oh, okay.
Some engineers.
Yes.
And engineers. He was an accountant as in a financial consultant.
Right.
My mum was a housewife, but she too ran an Indian dance school.
But this was more the conventional or typical Indian dance?
Yes, traditional Indian dance.
And that's a lot more hand movements, is it? Or?
Yeah, hand movements, facial gestures, and and of course, I mean, like all dance forms, it has a storyline and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we all had to go through mum's dance training,
Right.
which was compulsory.
Of course.
Or even if we didn't, we'd still hear the music and hear her teaching, and we would, be hanging around. So it was always there. And I think everyone, including Dhuruva as well, has performed from the time they're 3 or 4 years old. They've been on stage.
Yes, well, we'll talk about that part of his story. But for you, what happened next as you grew up?
Well, I went to London to study, lived there for about 3.5 years.
But not to study dance?
No,
because that was your passion.
Yes. I was sent to study law, and that was why I was sent there. Joined in at the Holborn Law School. Halfway through, probably on the second year. So I have an aunt who's Welsh, who was a ballerina. And
yes, this is the fascinating joining of so many different groups of people.
Yes, there is a lot of mixed culture in our side of the family, as in my dad's side of the family.
What a good thing.
Yeah, so she was a ballerina, and she was working at the the Opera House, the Royal, the Opera House, and
what's next to Covent Garden, close enough.
Yes, because it just reminds me of Covent Garden all the time, And she put me into Pineapple Studios and put me on to her ballet
And
teacher.
that was one of the most famous dance studios in the world.
Yes, at that time, yes, and it still is.
Yeah.
So I went and I did my ballet, my jazz, a little bit of tap though at that time, but more ballet, jazz, and modern, because then it was known as modern, whereas today it's known as contemporary. And I said, okay, this is what I want to do. And I kind of dropped out of law school.
Was that hard with your dad?
Oh yeah, they hit the roof. My mum, so when they kept getting, the transcripts, because those days we didn't have emails or anything.
No.
Everything was sent to your parents, not to you, was sent to your parents by post, right? And so when they kept getting, my grades were just going down, or, not attending this class, she's hardly in and stuff. My mum, called up and said, "What is going on? Have you met a boy? Is that what's going on there?" And then I had to tell them, no, I'm doing this on the side. So I do attend university, but then I'm doing this on the side. And I started paying for my classes because my dad was paying for uni and I didn't want him to know what I was doing.
Right.
So I
So
was
you were
working
working?
part-time.
Yeah.
Yes, working part-time, doing that as well and paying for my classes.
This is such an interesting story because this is a dancer's story.
Yeah.
You know, you do classes all the time and you have to pay for them.
Pay for them,
So you
yeah.
have to do something, usually in a restaurant or something similar.
So my first job was actually working in a hairdressing salon.
Okay.
I worked.
Gee, I can't imagine what effect that had on you then. Something went wrong with the dye.
Yes. So that was London. When I finished up there, my dad was in Sri Lanka for a bit on a World Bank project and then moved around. I ended up in India because they had moved in for a while on some project as well again. And I had actually finished up in London and Dad said, oh, we're not in Brunei, but if you want to go back home, you can. Nobody's there, but we're here. And I thought, okay, if I could live alone in London, what's it going to be like living in India? And this was like the early 90s. And I said, oh, okay, why not? I came and it was a very different India. It was opening up to,
Yes.
I think, the cable network and, imports and exports were opening up. So India was slightly opening up and I said, okay,
And
let's try
India
it.
was learning more about the rest of the world.
Yes,
Yeah, the
they
culture
were.
was
Yes.
expanding.
Yes, expanding. And so I came and within 6 months my parents went back to Brunei. They're like, my
Oh,
dad says,
so
okay,
suddenly you're-
my project's over, we're going, what do you
Oh.
want to do? Are you coming along with us? Or what? And by then, I had actually met a different group of people who were in the entertainment business. So I was working with advertising companies, choreographing for ads and stuff like that.
Right.
And I had met a group of people that was actually running fashion shows and dance shows in India. So at that time, fashion became really big, and they would have fashion shows every weekend at most of the five-star hotels. And in the middle of that, you'd actually have people, entertainment in between, people dancing and stuff.
Right.
So I kind of met someone.
So that's where you met your husband.
Yes, that's where I met him.
So he's an actor.
He's an actor.
And he also dances a bit?
He does. He's actually he comes from a family of actors. His father's a very big actor in India.
Big as in big that way, or big as in well known?
Way big as in he's done about 750 films.
Right.
Yeah.
I say that to be a joke because I look at Dhuruva as the grandson thinking, I don't think anyone would be big that way with a grandson looking like you.
Well,
No.
I think his dad's side of the family is they're kind of like big built and muscular kind of. Yeah.
A lot of muscle.
Yes,
lot of
well,
muscles.
so your dance school, so basically you started a CSTD dance school,
Yes.
which is really the English.
Yes. So
Just explain what CSTD means.
Okay, so it's the Commonwealth Society Teachers of Dance Australia, which is now known as ComDance.
Right, and as a curriculum-based way of learning to dance.
Yes, well, how did I get that was while I was in India, in between, when I met my husband and I knew that this was where I was going to settle, I was very sure that my in-laws wouldn't have wanted a daughter-in-law that was going to be jumping around and dancing all over the countryside. So I said, okay, let's start a dance school and do it the proper way. So I went back to Singapore and joined Nanyang Academy, which is quite a well-known university
Yep.
as well. And I did my teacher's training, and I happened to meet a lady called Miss Betty Tilley from Australia, from Western Australia, who actually ran the international part of CSTD.
Right.
And then she offered, the affiliation. And
So how many people do you think you've taught? Because you've been working 7 days a week, I believe.
I believe quite a lot of people have walked through my doors and have walked out, and there's still more coming in. And like I always tell my students, my doors are always open. So,
But have you got a number?
probably over 3,000, 4,000 people would have walked in through these years.
Yes. It's amazing, isn't it? Because you don't realise how many people's lives you affect. Which brings us to him. So when he was born, how did you manage with him? Because obviously if you were teaching all the time, what did you do with him?
I took him with me to class. He was there with me 24/7 in class. Yep. He
So where
literally
did you-
grew up in dance class.
Yeah, well, where did you put him?
On the corner, I would be facing the mirror and busy jumping and dancing about, and he'd be in his little basket kicking away, thinking his mummy's talking to him, but I was actually counting. and I think I've been dancing with him right in my belly, right from the time I had him.
It's a familiar story, but not all the children end up wanting to do the same thing their parents. I mean, that's
did.
normal in
He
life
never
generally.
did in the beginning. He
Oh,
never
didn't
did.
he?
He
I
did.
hated it. Or at least I said I hated it.
Well, we're going to find out about that in just a moment. So we'll take a short break and we'll be back with Dhuruva and Koki in just a tick. Our guests this week on Our Time are Dhuruva and his mum Koki. We've been talking about basically your background. Now we need to get to you. So do you actually ever remember sitting in the cradle watching your mum?
No, not at all. But I've heard enough stories that I can picture it.
That you can picture it?
Yeah. Like even when she said about coming to Adelaide, like I've seen enough photos and heard enough stories to can picture it.
That you feel that you've been before, sort of?
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
found out 2 years ago when I was in Adelaide for the first time, when I moved here, I called my mother on Mother's Day and I went to the Adelaide Zoo by myself and walked around the zoo with her on video call. And she was like, this is where you've already been here. This is where you took your first steps. You're only running around the petting zoo.
Oh, really? Sweet. That's wonderful.
She said, you were running around the petting zoo, not touching the
Amazing.
goats. And we're like, let's leave. You're like, no.
Well, first of all, why did you come to Australia in the first instance? Because you didn't come to Adelaide initially.
No, I was in Brisbane. I came to Brisbane to study a diploma and an advanced diploma of music theatre and commercial dance. And I found out about that when I was in India. I was looking to study performing arts, not sure if it was music theatre or
Why
something.
not in India? Why not stay in India?
There's nothing there to study, at least for what I wanted at that
Right.
time. I'm not sure about now. I hardly think there's anything. Even if there is, I highly
There's only a
doubt.
billion people. There must be an audience for you.
Oh, 1.2 billion, I think.
Well, there you go.
But I would hardly believe that whatever is there to study now isn't as high of a degree that it is here. or
It's
at least-
comprehensive.
Yeah.
Well, because the background isn't the same.
No.
I mean, the Indian history and culture is so different.
No.
But our culture's really been driven by, well, the UK initially and then America. And now hopefully Australia will eventually find its own feet for its own style. But so you were doing the course in Queensland?
Yeah, I was doing the course in Queensland, finished that, and I was looking at still staying here and wanting to do a bachelor's degree of music theatre. Out of the 4 major schools in Australia, I got in the one in Adelaide, which was the one I wanted, and I came here, started my university degree, so the Bachelor of Music Theatre at the Elder Conservatorium.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm studying now. I'm on my 3rd year, so we're doing that.
Right. So you graduate this year? There's only 3 years to go? Or
Yeah,
can you go
technically
4?
at the end of this year I should be done.
Right.
And 3rd year is our biggest year with 3 performances. One we've just finished on the town in concert, Sweeney Todd coming in June, and a chorus line in September, October.
Right. So it's quite a diversity of music styles, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a
You've
massive
really gone
course.
from the 40s. When was chorus line? 70s.
60s, 70s, yeah, 70s.
60s,
I believe.
70s, yeah. And Sweeney Todd was,
Around
the
almost the
same.
same, but different music and
Quite
different
different,
styles.
quite
Yeah.
different.
It's a massive course.
But so you've come to a country in a city that you know no one.
No.
How did you manage? How did you feel?
I was just by myself, did what I wanted, was myself. Initially it was all right because I was stuck with the same few people I knew in the
Right.
university, and I stayed with those people for almost the entire year. By the end of the year, I was like, I want something different, and that's when I
But
met
you were teaching you were teaching at Quick Steps, I think.
I
at
wasn't
one point.
teaching. I still do. I worked there as a rug cutter. So basically,
What's a rug cutter?
Yeah, what's
it's
that?
a Latin and ballroom school. They have social events.
Oh, so they need someone to
so
dance
they need
with.
someone to come,
That's a taxi dancer.
basically. But rug cutter sounds cool.
Hopefully you'll do Sweet Charity at some time, then you really understand
What it is.
taxi dancer really is. But you got into the show Men Who Dance, and we've got some clips here of you actually dancing in the show. The show was quite successful during the Adelaide Fringe, and then you did a country tour.
Yeah, the country arts tour.
Yeah. So let's have a look at you in action, because whilst you look at somebody sitting in a chair, you've got no idea of what it is that you actually do.
I basically.
This happens to be the whole show wasn't Indian, was it?
No, this is the Bollywood number that I choreographed with William in front and Charlie at the back.
They've both been on the show.
Oh yeah, I was there with them. This was our jazz number. That's Callan, who actually hasn't been on the show, but it used to be with Kurt. It's a very jazzy, Fosse style. The song that you can't hear is Sing Sing Sing, which is another classic Fosse song.
This is very curious.
This
and
is-
slow motion.
I mean, don't mind the slow motion. This is more just, I would call it a very boxing cabaret number that I came up with, where I just get myself beaten up by William and Ricky sometimes. Well, actually, I feel like Ricky gets beaten up mostly, but that's not very pretty. This is a little construction worker number. We're singing some really old school music. That's me singing A Land of a Thousand Dances. That's Ricky and I. We're meant to be having a hip hop battle, but we ended up just fighting over his hat. And this is just doing some hip hop. Very commercialized.
That's a great number.
This
This is a bit unusual.
What is this? This was our disco number. Well, it was meant to be a disco routine, and it ended up becoming two guys in very disco-esque outfits and one homeless man at a bus stop. Just disco's crazy. Oh, this is my solo. Very improvised contemporary. Some hip-hop in it, but primarily a bit of contemporary. Actually, the music I dance to is from an Indian movie.
The show, though, was a whole lot of different styles of a whole lot of different stuff. This is the guys.
This is our finale. Well, when you have 6 of us from different backgrounds and different styles, like Charlie, a ballet dancer, and Ricky, a hip-hop dancer primarily, like it comes with a lot of elements. Oh, here's us tapping, or here's me tapping for now. And then sooner or later you'll see the other boys tapping as well with me, and bang, right there. Yeah, the show provides a lot of different things, so there we are. And this is us
You've been
sitting
caught
down.
looking at the monitor.
Oh no.
So was that good for you because it gave you a chance to choreograph, which you probably haven't had much of a chance to do?
Not to that extent, because I have choreographed, but it's been small actual dance numbers.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a little bit more than just choreographing. I feel like we created storylines in something, concepts, and like a lot of character in the dance. It wasn't just us dancing. It was us creating a small piece that had a story to share. So I guess that gave me a massive opportunity, especially
Well,
freedom.
I suppose this is one of the things that you're learning, obviously, is music theatre and the breadth of music theatre. But I think this show probably took you to another level in a different way.
Yeah, it was definitely
And
not
maybe
a musical.
also the way that the industry's going.
Hopefully, I think so. Especially when you have the freedom of creativity. Men Who Dance is not a musical, but it still uses a lot of elements.
Yes.
I use a lot of creation with story and my dancing, but yeah, having the freedom to create and also come up with something new helps.
Yeah. But not only that, the fact that you're working with just other guys. It's
Yeah.
very rare. usually men are there to support the girls,
Yeah,
to lift them or dance behind them or whatever.
I'm sure Charlie said that, especially with ballet. Part of it is
very much with ballet,
you always
yeah.
have the man there to lift up a femme to showcase them. But having 5 other guys, initially 4, to dance with, felt like a breeze. Especially because
Because you didn't have to pick any of them up.
Well, no, you don't have to pick any of them. Well, I got picked up mostly out of everybody.
Yes, you did.
I also got picked on mostly out of everybody, and then I started picking on everybody else. It felt relaxing because all of us came in knowing what we wanted, and it felt easy to work with each other, and no one was too upfront about things. It was very good.
Well, again, I guess in show business, and you'd naturally have found this with your background as well, everyone becomes a family after a while when you're working together.
Oh, yes, yes.
And that's the joy of being a performer, really.
Yes, yes. I think there's no difference. When you're on stage, you're just giving your energy, and you're also taking other people's energy, and you're sharing, and yeah, it's.
I mean, we've joked about the fact you look like brother and sister, not mother and son.
It's not only you; everyone says it.
Yes. Are you telling us the truth? Is this really your mother, or is this your girlfriend who's just come over from India?
I mean, I'm not going to say much more. Get us in trouble.
No, actually, you look alike in an unusual sort of way. You look alike.
I also used to look like my dad when he was younger, but I think now growing into it, I'm not sure who I look like. A bit of both, I guess.
So you're proud of each other?
Of course.
Yes.
Well, if it weren't for her or my father, I wouldn't be here. And I say this to everyone.
Well, in one sense, but also in the other of the performing side.
In literal and figurative sense. But I say this to everyone because I talk to them about my family and they ask me more questions. But the first thing I say is, oh yes, I'm very lucky. Especially coming from a country that doesn't appreciate performing arts. Regardless of my family's background, I'm just lucky for who they are.
Yeah.
Regardless of them doing performing arts.
Yes, no, I understand.
I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
And if it weren't for that, I wouldn't be
Well, see, that's a great attitude for any child to have about their parent, but even more so for a child to go into the same industry that you love, because it is handing the baton to the next generation. Speaking of handing the baton, though, we have to take a short break. We'll be back in a tick. We've been talking with Dhuruva and Koki, his mum, about the dance school that you run and the course that you're currently doing. Where do you want to go, Dhuruva? Because I've heard you say, I'm not sure I can go back to India to have a career.
Well, that's a backup. But
We can go home and let mum cook for you.
yes, and I can cook the things I've been learning.
And teach in the dance school.
Exactly.
But that's not what you really want, is it?
Not at the moment and not anytime soon. I think I want to keep performing. I want to perform because I've been training and I've been learning, and
Sure.
I want to perform while I can.
So how difficult is it for you to say stay in Australia?
Very complicated because I'm a student and I'm under a student visa. But there's a lot of different categories and rules and legal things I got to fill to get to where I want to be. But on top of that, I'm not studying law or a doctor or anything that's considered.
So that brings up a very interesting question. When does society understand that performers are professional? They've spent as many years training, in fact more years training than most medical people and lawyers, etc., because most of us start when we're quite young. When did you start learning?
I started officially learning when I was 5.
Okay, 5.
Yep.
And how old are you now?
I'm now 23.
There you go. So take those numbers together.
I think that's
You've been learning for 18 years.
17 to 18 years, yeah.
Yeah. Now, you know, doctors and lawyers don't actually learn for 17 to 18 years. And this is something that we haven't quite as a society totally understood. How long did you train? Because it must have been a similar sort of time.
Yeah, probably. I started dancing at the age of 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And you still
and I'm still dancing, and I'm still.
But
I'm
see,
still
it's about
learning.
health as well, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
about your mind
Yeah,
working
yeah,
well,
yeah.
your body working
Yeah,
well.
and-
Look, congratulations to both of you. I know you've come over to see Dhuruva. We just thought it was a perfect opportunity to both meet you both, because we've not seen him with the other boys in the show that have come on the show before. And we have to go. So until next time on OurTime, keep yourself nice. Till then, thanks for your company. Thanks for yours. See you soon.